customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DeJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you're a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution podcast with John DeJulius. This week, John talks with best-selling author and business coach Andy Bailey. Andy learned how to build great organizations by first building a great business. He started his first business in college, grew it to an Inc. 500 multi-million-dollar company, then successfully sold and exited. In recent years, Andy founded Petra, where he's able to coach and pass on to other entrepreneurs, business owners, and leaders the principles and practices which are rooted in Rockefeller Habits methodology that he used to build his successful enterprise. In this episode, you'll learn how Andy has taught hundreds of business leaders to reach their potential personally and professionally, what the greatest obstacle to scaling a business is today, and how someone can become boundless, and what that even means. Now here's your host, John DeJulius.
Hello, revolutionaries, and welcome to another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast. And today I have a superstar, friend, mentor, peer, you name it, Mr. Andy Bailey. And Andy is the founder and CEO of many companies that he's built and sold. He's the founder of Petra Coach and Boundless, that he currently, those two companies he's running. And I'm just really excited to have Andy here to share where he's come from, how he's built his own businesses, how he's helped hundreds, thousands of other businesses grow, and what he's passionate about now. Welcome, Andy.
Thanks, John, man. I really appreciate you calling me and asking me to do this. And I appreciate your support of the work that we've done over the years too, man. You always show up. There's certain people in our lives that when we have a call for something, that they just show up. And you've always been one of those people for me. So I appreciate it very much.
My pleasure. Vice versa. Thank you. So Andy, where's are you still in Nashville? Where are you at today?
Today I'm outside of Nashville. We were chatting just a little bit. I travel so much that it's hard to figure out what is actually home these days.
Right. So Andy, tell us the backstory of Andy Bailey. I know you started a business as early as college, but let's talk about how you got to where you are.
Yeah, there was some lessons learned early on in those days too, but I was in this cell phone business very early on. So in the cellular business back when they were only installed in your car. And when I say I was in that business, man, I was a contractor. I was a contracted salesperson in that business. And on the side, I would install phones in people's cars and deinstall them for dealerships. So I was the, kind of expert or whatever. It didn't take a whole lot of knowledge to be able to do that. But that's where I cut my teeth in technology, was installing those phones, taking them out, on Saturdays while I was in school.
What do they call that, Andy? Third-party market auto. When you don't get it from the dealership, but you go to a third-party,
like an authorized dealer kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
But back then, there were just a couple carriers. The stuff didn't work anywhere, as you can imagine. So we were selling $1,200, $1,500 pieces of equipment that kind of worked every now and then.
Right. Is this late 80s, early 90s?
This would have been early 90s.
Yeah.
91, 92 timeframe.
Then did you start selling the mobile purse phones? That was my first. I had a bag over my shoulder, and it was huge.
Yeah, bag phones, and you carry them around with you. We used to go to flea markets and county fairs and set up a little booth and hawk those things as we went. Generally they were paying us like $200, $300, $400 for every activation that we were doing. And I found myself as a junior in college, making almost $200,000 a year as a contracted salesperson. So my personality is when I get a little piece of something I enjoy, I've got a kind of an addictive personality, is I'll just chase a little more of that as I go. So, and I'm getting to a particular point here. What I found in myself was, and I'd never seen that kind of money before in my entire life.
It's a lot of money today. In the early 90s, that's $750,000. I mean, to us today, that's crazy, especially for a 20-year-old.
Yeah. And I spent it fast as I got it.
Yeah, I'm sure.
I had a hell of a time. But what I realized about myself was I would never like go to the lake with my friends because it would, in my mind, it was, oh, that's $1,500 I'm not going to get today. That's like, I was just addicted to the sell. So I made a transition early on, the senior year, and went from a large income to almost a no income because I moved from selling cell phones to selling pagers, beepers. So you buy the time from the carrier for $1.75, you sell it to the market at $10, you make the arbitrage, and you pay somebody to answer the phones. Started a little paging company. But you're making 20 grand a month. Now you're making $4, and you got to go reproduce that over time. But it was recurring revenue. So once I built it once, I had it that next month. So $5 became $10, became $20, became $40. Turned that into almost a $4 million business as a senior in college that was recurring revenue.
Why did you stay in college?
I didn't. I actually left.
If I was your mentor, I'm saying these classes are taken away from you making money.
Yeah, I was the guy that dropped out of accounting 101 3 times and had to learn it on the streets later on.
Yeah.
That business took off and grew, and pagers turned into newer technology, two-way radios, Nextel, software, all kinds of stuff. And that expanded 18 years. So I ran that company from 93 to 2011 when I ultimately sold it, but learned a lot of lessons. The one thing that I took early on was recurring revenue.
Yeah.
Figuring out a way. And I have a core belief that any business can figure out a way to have recurring revenue.
I 100% agree. And Andy, to show you, how cutting edge I am, that is something I've become hot about the last 2 years. I mean, I'm 40 years late to the party, right? But, the monthly recurring revenue and not only what it does to your top and bottom line, but the valuation of the business. And you're right. You could do it literally in any business model. You could do it in a restaurant. I mean, you explain it better than I can. Let's talk about that. What does the automatic customer, the reoccurring customer look like?
Yeah, if you think about it, people pay a lot of money just to be front of line, just to be able to walk up and be able to get to. I mean, I went to the movies. I don't go to the movies very often, but I was in Philadelphia and I had dinner, and there was a movie across the street. So I go into this AMC theater, and there's 2 lines. There's a line where you go get your ticket, or you put your stuff in the machine that gives you a ticket. And there's another little tiny line that's like AMC. I don't remember the name, but they called it some kind of gold level membership.
Right. Yeah.
It's a recurring revenue stream that they've created inside their business. And all it is front of line. You get a little discount at the concession stand or whatever. But really, it's just so that you can walk in, get your ticket, and get to your seat a lot faster, right?
Yeah.
And every organization has the ability to think in terms of how do we get that, even if it's just a portion of the revenue. Costco, last I checked, pays for their entire business based on your membership. Before they sell you a 4-gallon thing of milk, they've already covered all their expenses with what you're paying just to walk in their door.
Well, as consumers, I'll have to just check my credit card today, but I have 3 dozen, right? iTunes, Apple, Netflix, Hulu, maybe my gym membership. Those are all the same thing. But as you're pointing out, people have learned it doesn't have to be those traditional models to do it, right? If you like massages at my spa, and I can get you to buy an unlimited package where it makes the best interest for both of us. But now I got guaranteed income for a percentage. It goes back to monthly recurring revenue. That's what you want to see spike up?
Yeah, you could do like John Roberts platinum level, and they get a little card with their picture on it or whatever, and that means when they call,
they get their person.
The different phone rings.
Yep.
Different level of service. You guys are the wizards of this stuff, but people just need to think about that in terms of if you have to recreate your revenue every 30 days, that's a challenge.
It is.
And plenty of businesses have to go do it that way. They look at their models and just try to figure out small ways to fill those gaps through something that is recurring, they can build a significant cash flow, which is what we all need.
Yeah. And the valuation of your business is crazy different. But all right, so you do this, you grow that business, and then what? You sell it?
January 7th, 4:38 p.m. in the afternoon, sold that business. I was really tired.
What year?
2011.
Okay.
2011. I found out, and this came from teachings later on, like speaking entrepreneur classes and stuff like that. But I'm about a 10-year entrepreneur, meaning about every 10 years, and I've had this experience inside of Petra, which we'll get to as well. About every 10 years, once something becomes operationally efficient, then I'm on to the next challenge. Yeah. Rather than just staying around, because I did this in NationLink, which was the telecom business, hanging around and creating chaos and breaking things for the sake of breaking things to make it more difficult. Starting something else gives me energy because I get bored with something once it becomes, easier working.
Right.
And we're in that business of making things work well. So we get there faster and faster all the time. We had operated that business for the last 8 years of its existence on what was then called Rockefeller Habits, which today is scaling up in Vern's methodology, learning that directly from Vern in workshops and kind
Vern
of
Harnish,
befriending him over time. It changed the organization from brute force leadership to the system ran the company, and I was able to take a bunch of time. And through that process, there were a lot of people that would call, no different than you. They call and say, "Hey, can I come just see what you're doing over there? Like, you guys, I know you guys are doing huddles. Can we come see what that is? Can we witness a planning?"
Yeah. What's the magic formula that you guys are, executing so well, growing and just crushing it? It's that old quote, are you in business for 30 years or 31 year, 30 each year, right?
So we learned pretty fast that we had something special. That business changed from $75,000 in gross margin per full-time employee to $275,000 in gross margin per full-time employee at the time of sale. And I give Vern and that methodology full credit for building a system that allowed us to go do that. So it took about a year after the sale to just figure out what I was going to do. Went down to the Gulf of Mexico, spent a bunch of time down there. And these people kept calling me, John. They would call me and say, "Hey, I hear you're not doing anything. Can you come help me with my business? I hear you're not doing anything. I heard you sold your business. Can you come help me?" So I started engaging with these other entrepreneurs, people running companies. I didn't really know what I was doing. And just helping them do things like set up their daily huddles. What is their sales meeting going to look like? Just helping with what we had already done inside of our own organization and then bringing that to bear against other, outside organizations. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed that for a few reasons. Some of this you'll get because you're entrepreneur minded as well. I could still stay in the game, but I didn't have any of the risk. At the end of the day, I got to go on to the next thing. The next juice. So I didn't have to stay in this one space and frankly, deal with the individuals that were going to be doing all the stuff that we just talked about, because we all know that that's where business gets difficult, is the people side of it. So I started at the end of that year, and I told myself at the beginning, I wouldn't make any big decisions for 12 months. But at the end of that year, made the decision that I was going to start a coaching practice, not be a coach, but start a coaching practice. And I sat down and I wrote a 10-year plan. Now, that was 12 years ago. I wrote a 10-year plan of exactly what it looked like in a 10-year horizon, how big it was, how many coaches we had, how much revenue we had, where we were geographically. All of that stuff was on a plan before, I say we, it was really me, got started. And then we spent a couple of years building out tools and materials and things that live inside of Petra, which today is massive. And we took it to market.
So Petra is your coaching company's name. Explain Correct. That just so our listeners understand what Petra is and has become.
Yeah. So we went to the market with, Vern has this scaling up methodology thing to go do. And it's difficult. It's not an easy thing to, I use the word install into an organization.
Especially on your own. So we figured out how to take that, Vern's methodology, and how to actually install it into an organization. Now, it took 2 years to put the parts and pieces together before we could ever really get to our scale.
And now we've gotten to the point where there's 30 coaches that run around the world.
So Petra coach has 30 coaches that go around, the world. And we've worked with many of your clients. And I meant to tell you this when we got on the phone, but I'll tell you now. John from NOLA Education called us last week. He's a client of yours. He was referred to Petra from EO New Orleans, and just says Petra, his coach, I forget the coach's name, but you'll look it up and hopefully recognize him. He just said they have made such a difference. They are growing too fast, which is a great problem, but still a problem. And your coach recommended us. So yeah, we love dealing with your clients because they get it. They wouldn't be your clients if they didn't get it, or they wouldn't be your clients long. Yeah, so you're the largest scaling up coaching system. You have 30 coaches and you just do amazing things. Some other things I forgot to mention is you are a 3-time author.
So 2 books. So No Try Only Do was the first book.
Yes.
And then Vitamin B for Business is the second book. And the third, if you want to call it authorship, It's actually a journal. And we can talk more about Boundless as a part of this too.
Yeah, I want to talk about all of them now or in a little bit, because that's important. Great books. No Try Only Do, Building a Business on Purpose. And I think that has a lot of your systems in there. Right. But what's really cool, then Vitamin B for Business, your 1-a-day supplement for improvement in business and leadership. But what I like about you is you hit on as much, if not more, on how this applies to your personal life.
Yeah.
And your workshops and speak, because listen, we all know it can't be isolated, right? It's not going to work. The other thing I want to make sure, you are a great author and a great speaker. We had you at the Customer Service Revolution 2019 pre-pandemic, and you were one of, if not the highest rated speakers. We can't wait to have you come back. I know a bunch of my clients then hired you for their conferences and workshops, and they couldn't stop thanking me for bringing you, to making that connection. So you made me look really good. So, all right, you built Petra up. You're still running Petra. You're still coaching. What else are you doing now?
So about, I guess, almost 2 years ago now. And we've always had this, and you mentioned it, where we work on the people part inside of the Petra process. But there's very few people call and go, hey, I need you to help me with my people. They call and say, I need you to help me with, my business is chaotic. I'm frustrated with this, but it's usually not. I'm frustrated with Jimmy, right? Or, truth be told, frustrated with their own leadership.
Right.
They're calling because they want us to help with the business.
Right.
But we know that if a business is going to scale, the only way that happens is the people sitting around the table and the people doing the work also have to scale. Like John has to get better, faster, stronger, smarter to elevate his game, because the game ain't going to elevate past him.
Right. What worked at 12 million isn't going to work at 25 or 30 million. Or it's
going to break a bunch of people, a bunch of processes, and
right.
It's a lot of chaos. Right. That's what the result of fast growth without people scaling at the same time. So we internally call it capacity. So the goal here is, along with Petra, how do we make sure that the individuals around the table and in the organization are increasing the capacity? And capacity can be a lot of things. It can be skill sets, like learning something new. It can be attitude towards something, negative, positive, growth, fixed, all that stuff, right? It can be mindfulness. It can be physical. It could be wellness. There's a lot of ways to build additional capacity. But if we don't go do that, everything else becomes exponentially more difficult. I'm going to ask you to do more. If you don't have the capacity to do more, then it's just stress or overwhelm, all these words that we hear from people. So as part of that, I was always, frankly, frustrated that we couldn't, inside of Petra, do more of that. Like, how do we get people involved in this? How do we get them with a one-page personal plan, written down, 10 years out, executing every day? Because myself, I've been doing that for well over a decade. Our coaches, our team, all do that just as part of a common practice because I've done it. But it was really difficult to get it inside of the planning part, the work that we do as a business organization. So about 2 years ago, I said, well, shit, if I can't get it done this way, I'll get it done another way. And I tore out myself from the leadership of Petra. Mandy is, Mandy Burge. So she is the president of Petra. She runs that organization. I'm still the founder. I'm still involved in it. I still do the coaching with some clients. But today I'm running way more time in this concept or idea called Boundless, which is a sister company to Petra.
Boundless.
Boundless.
Which is the title of your newest book, Journal. Which we're going to have links to everything we're talking about here in the show notes, links to Petra Coach, links to Andy's newest venture, Boundless, the journal, how you can order it, Andy's, put his email, where you can follow him on social media. All this stuff is going to be in your show notes. But go ahead. Let's talk about the pivot to Boundless.
So because, scaling an organization and working with an organization to help them scale through the Petra process is arduous enough. And because I wanted to spend more time with the individuals, the ones that want to spend the time, like I can't change people, they got to change themselves. I wanted to build the same systems and processes that we do to scale an organization for the human, the high-performing human at the table or in the business, and then have me and an additional team that is focused strictly on that. So that's where the idea was born one day. And now we've transitioned damn near fully to working in this and on this concept with high-performing humans. So we have leaders of businesses, people that just want to get better. And we pretty much cover the gamut inside of there with how do we make them better. John, we start with, if we're dealing with adults, I'll talk to you about kids and teens in a minute, which is really interesting. We start with wellness and fitness. And the idea there is, and this is something I've done for myself for a long time, is we start with an epigenetics, a genetics DNA test, a lab panel, and a gut biome test. And we have a partnership that runs all this kind of stuff in MD and practice and all that. But we want to inform the individual, the high-performing human, of exactly what's inside of them with data. So it's like your P&L you have in your balance sheet. You have the data, then you can inform decisions. Most people make decisions about their own wellness because they read it, they heard it in a podcast, and fasting is good for you, and they start fasting.
Yeah, right.
What does your body say? Right? It may or may not be good for you. And I know myself that I learned a lot once I got in there and I had the data. Now, for me, I retest on a quarterly basis and go through a whole regimen of stuff. But supplementation, nutrition, exercise, mindfulness, additional testing outside of that, some markers up or down. So understanding ourselves internally and then bringing planning processes, no different than business, to improve those metrics and numbers over the course of time so we can scale our own capacity. If we don't feel good, we're not going to perform good. If we feel good, we'll perform good.
So Andy, should grab this? Is it the CEO? Does he bring you in and do it with his leadership team, his entire company? Or is it just someone that, screw his company's not going to do it, but he or she needs to get on this? Like, who's your target audience? And I'm sure it's everyone, because I know this stuff and it's gold, but go ahead.
We're broken into a few parts and pieces, right? So this kind of high end thing that I just talked about includes the testing. It includes sitting down, no different than we would with a company, and figuring out what you want yourself to look like in 10 years. We break it down into different categories: relationships, achievements, rituals, and wealth. It's all based on the scaling up methodology. And we break that 10-year vision down into 1 year, no different than we would in business. And then we break that 1 year down into month by month by month. And we use this, as you've mentioned, a journaling system to track and monitor that. We pair you with a coach. A coach is with you every 30 days. You do a 30-day reset, and you just continue that process forever.
But you could do this for companies, their leadership teams. And then can you do it for the one-offs?
Totally. The one-offs are the ones where we're talking about starting with the testing and the gut.
Okay.
Like that's where we go really.
So my company, if I work in a company and they don't choose to do this, I can do it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what if I'm a CEO and I understand the value of this to get it for me and my leadership team and trickle down to my employees?
So I'll tell you what happened 4 or 5 months ago. I got a call from Grand Rapids, and there's a guy up there in Grand Rapids, 120 person business. I've known him for a while. He says, I've done your program. I know how powerful it is. I want it for every employee in my company. I'm going to rent a gymnasium and I'm going to shut down the business. Like, this is where people freak out as a business owner. I'm going to shut down the business, close all the doors, turn the phones off, and I'm going to put 120 people in a room. Can you get them through the plan in a day? And I'm like, hell yes, I can. Because I've done it with bigger audience.
Right.
So we did that. And every single, and he built on it after, every single person in his organization after that one day had a full 10-year, 1 year, and 30-day execution plan for their life. And he tied it to incentives. So we went back into his business and said, look, if this is really important to you, it's really important to me. As the leader of the business, you build capacity, you get better, you feel, think, act better. We're going to be better. So he's incentivizing them as they achieve personal goals that they set out for themselves. So yes, and most people will never do that.
And people, be it a business leader or a one-off, can find this at the boundless.me website.
Yeah, it's just boundless.me. That's it.
Boundless.me. Yeah, which we'll provide. I love this. Andy, why I like this so much is I have a personal purpose statement. It's something I look at every day, and it says to live an extraordinary life so countless others do, right? And I believe that's what you're giving the systems do. Like, I don't want to live, and I know you're the same way. I don't want to live an extraordinary life so I have bigger bank accounts, more cars, more vacations, right? I want to live an extraordinary life so my 3 boys are more likely to. My 150 employees are more likely to. Anyone I come in contact with, and I take it to such a degree, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, it's not an opportunity to live an extraordinary life. It's a responsibility, right? Because if I choose, or Andy Bailey chooses, or anybody listening chooses to surround myself with not the best character people, to not eat right today, to skip some workouts, all of a sudden, I'm cheating you if you're dependent on me in any way as a relative or a client or an employee. I'm cheating you. And so I go back to, the greats of the world, whoever we might think they are, Martin Luther King, Steve Jobs, Walt Disney, whoever they are, right? Arnie Mulham. What if they would have said back in the day, screw it. I'm just going to be ordinary, right? How different would everyone's lives be? So to me, it's a burden, a positive burden that haunts me, that am I living an extraordinary life? And what you provide is you take it from being a platitude. Oh, that's a nice sticker, a bumper sticker, to no, here's your report card. And here's what you need to pay a little bit more attention to right now, right? And here's what you're crushing, but here's why you're at a 7.5 of your extraordinary scale. That's how I look at it. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, and it's no different than this is what Petra's done for a decade with companies. It's the exact same thing. We go into a company, we figure out where they want to go into the future. We design what that vision actually looks like really, really clearly. And then we back it up and say, all right, what do we got to do this year? What do we got to do this quarter? What do we got to do this month? What do we got to do this week? What do we got to do this day? All we did in Boundless was take that exact same process and point the light to the human being. But as you said, John, people in our organizations and really people around us in general are never going to outpace us. So if we're growing an organization or people are around us, they're going to stay right below. They're just not going to pass the pace at which we run. So our job, if we want them to run faster, is to run faster.
I love that. Let's say that again. People in our organization will never outpace us, the leader.
Yeah, they just don't.
Love that. And if we want more from them, we got to be picking up the pace.
So if you're listening to this and you think about, if you have a team of people that you lead in any organization, if you're the owner and you got a bunch of people, 150, as you said, or if you're a division manager and you got 30, or if you're just the person on the line that's got somebody else there as their subordinate in some way, just think about that for a second. Your pace, your skill set, your ability, the way at which you work, live in some cases, most people that are on your team, they're not doing that at a higher level. Like, you are the one that is the impediment to their growth.
Right.
So if you get exponentially better, you build more capacity. That's where we started.
Right.
They will automatically follow. Most, not all.
It's kind of the opposite of you're as strong as your weakest link, right? You're only going to go as fast as your fastest, right? You can't go faster than the leader,
That's right.
Good. I love that.
Are you ready to meet John, the DeJulius Group team, and your favorite podcast guests in person? Register now for the Customer Service Revolution Conference. Visit customerservicerevolution.com for tickets and details.
All right, let's pivot here. Andy, and what I like about talking to you, and we do it a lot. I got to bring us back. The reason why I worked our friend Arnie Mulham into that, when I said people the greats, Disney, Steve Jobs, Arnie Mulham, is because I had to make up for a couple months ago. I was in EO Nashville. You were out of town. Yeah, I spoke to EO Nashville. And so I was talking about, I mentioned Petra. I talked about Advanced Financial, all the companies from that town I've worked at being lucky. I said, but the one that I take the most pride in is CJ Advertising, because when I met Arnie, he was just so fumbling, failing. He didn't know his right hand from his left hand. And I can't believe I got him to be successful. So I roasted him. So that was my way of trying to, make up some points there. So hopefully he'll hear this, or you'll mention that I dropped his name in a positive light this way.
I'll be sure and tell him I'll actually see him on Monday night.
All right, good. No, so back to, what I love, just feels like we're having a beer and just shooting the, stuff about philosophies in life. And we can go in so many directions. But
let me add one thing, John, real quick. Through this process of creating this for really business people, what we left out and realized pretty early, and this comes from, I was sitting on my back porch with a guy who owns a company, and he was telling me about his son. And he was telling me, my son does his homework, but my son won't turn in his homework. He gets bad grades. He's brilliant, but he won't turn in his homework. His mom and I are on him all the time. He won't turn in his homework. Well, this is the same shit that we deal with inside of Petra all the time. I can't get an employee to do something. Coach, can you go talk to them and see if you can, move them to do the right thing? And we do it all the time. And in my head, I'm like, dude, you're not getting your son to turn in his homework. Your wife ain't going to get your son to turn in his homework. But I bet if I had a Boundless coach that was working with him for a little bit, we could get it to be his idea that it was the right thing to turn in his homework and get him to turn in his homework because he would want to, right?
Yes.
So we, as a part of this program, we have a thing called Boundless Kids and Teens.
Boundless Kids and Teens.
Correct.
So this is something I could bring back to my three sons.
It is the single piece of Boundless that gets the most like it's blowing up basically. So we take 7 to 12-year-olds, that's the kids, and then 13 to 18-year-olds, that's the teens, and we put them through a similar curriculum that we would the adults. So we work in seasons because they don't have quarters. They have seasons, winter, spring, summer, fall. We work in 3 areas of their life: family, fun, and future. We don't get into wealth building and things like that, but we break it down. And it's really the premise of how do we teach a kid to think for themselves? Kids are told what to do their entire lives. And then they go out into the world at 22. And as business people, we're like, well, why can't you think for yourself? Well, hell, nobody ever taught them to. It wasn't even an option to think for yourself for 18 years. And then teaching them how to set goals, teaching them how to execute against those goals, teaching them how to build best self habits, as we call it, things like drinking water, making your bed, like simple stuff, right? And over the course of time, we build these younger people that have developed these life skills. We also put them in forums so they can share with one another. We get them together once a year. Our next one is in 2023. We'll have a kids camp. So they'll come and meet the other kids they've been working with in these forums all year long. But super excited about kids and teens and how, that's going to have a positive impact on our world down the road for sure.
I love it. And, you probably already thought of it, but I could see this going into sports, right? High school and college sports, and helping keep them on track and motivated, and balancing academics and obviously their athletic goals and the team goals. Love it. All right, Andy, one thing I want to wrap up here with is just like sitting outside on your patio by the fire with a good glass of wine. Or what's your preferred drink? Are you a Scotch?
Tequila.
Tequila. What kind?
Añejo, typically.
Okay. All right, good. All right. So we're sipping on that. And of course, we're as business leaders and as business consultants, we're going to talk about the crazy times we're in. And it hasn't been new, right? The last 3 years have been nothing of uncertainty. And if anyone tells you, they can tell you what the next 12 months is going to be, they're full of crap, right? And are we in a recession? Is a recession coming? How do we deal with this great resignation, the quitting culture? I mean, it is everyone's head is spinning. But one thing I'll take on the quitting culture. I think that's the stupidest term ever. It's nothing new. Listen, our whole lives, back when me and you were playing Little League together, football, the quitting culture, all quiet quitting, I'm sorry. All that is just people who show up and do the bare minimum, and that's it, right? We've always had that. Now, the secret is to have a smaller percentage of that, but those people don't get promoted. They don't go and start their own business. They don't live an extraordinary life, and that allows other people to. I feel like there's too much attention, and I'm adding to it, given to this quitting culture. I think it's just stupid. But you take your pick on any of this.
Let's start.
I think me and you right now, the at least I can speak for myself. The biggest challenge is the hand holding that I need to do for leaders because they're panicking. And so how are you doing? How are you handling it? Both your leaders that work for you and your leaders that you coach.
So first of all, let's go back to the quitting culture things you were talking about.
Quiet quitting.
Quiet quitting. So this bare minimum, I just shot a video this morning and put on social media. If anybody wants to follow social media, it's Andy Bailey 01 across all platforms. And what I talked about in there was I travel a ton, like 200 plus days a year. I'm somewhere. So I'm interacting with service people constantly. And I have, over the last few years, noticed this incredible decline in the level of service. And what I mean by that is more than ever, it is easy to compete. More than ever, it's easy to compete. You walk into a restaurant, you get a waiter or a waitress right now, and they do a really good job. Like they look at you when you're talking to them, they smile, they get the order right. All that stuff is just kind of given. But they show up, whatever good looks like in that particular role, they're doing a good job. And today, that shines like never before. It used to be, as you said, most of the people did a pretty good job. But now most of the people do not do a good job. So if you're good at all, you will rise to the top. The second part of that is, and I hear this in businesses all the time because I've been working in the business world forever. People are waiting for somebody else to show them a path to their next thing. I'll use the term career path. So companies that I've worked with, companies our coaches worked with, and is it a bad idea to have career paths? I don't think it's a bad idea to lay down, here's level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. Here's the education and skills you need to get to move up to whatever rank you want to move up to in an organization. I think it's totally fine. And if that is the crutch for the person, well, I'm doing this. I'm not going to do a good job at this role because I want to be in that role. You're not ever going to get to the next role unless you do a good job at the role that you're in. The best way to move up a career ladder or have advancement of any kind is to be the very best at what you do today. And it doesn't matter if what you do today is picking up garbage on the street. If you do that better than anyone else, you will be recognized for it and you will have advancement, even if it comes from an outside source, not internal.
100%.
That's a soapbox thing for me right now because I just got back from a week-long trip and I was experiencing it all over the place. And then, hand holding and panic. And I always tell people, control what you can control. Stop watching the news. You can't do anything about that anyway. If you just want to be informed, that's fine, but don't let it affect your emotions, which is what I'm doing.
And that's called doom scrolling, right? Just scrolling and say, oh my God, the world's coming to an end. Everyone's quitting. We're at war. Election's coming up. And it's like, you don't feel too good about life.
Well, I said this to you earlier, but no amount of anxiety ever changed an outcome. You're going to sit around and worry about something. You have to go do shit. It's not about worrying about it. So just remove as much of that as possible. We get in business, so we do inside of Petra all that business coaching, and it always irritated me, and my irritation comes out pretty quickly in these rooms, when somebody, a leader, a CFO, COO, CEO, would bring these words to me. Well, did you know that the industry average is this, whatever this may be?
Right.
And I would say, so you just gave me a number that is the middle ground of mediocrity. Like
Right.
everything below that number is shit.
Right.
And then we got to scale way up here above that number. You gave me the industry average and you're telling me you're happy with industry average. Why don't you forget industry average? Who cares?
Top 10% that's what we should be talking about. The top 10%.
From my perspective, we shouldn't even be looking at where other people rank anyway. We should be making our own decisions and blowing it out of the water. If I had looked at with Petra what everybody else was doing, I would never have Petra where it is.
You would have been out of business within the first 5 years because 4 out of 5 businesses go out of business within the first 5 years, right?
Well, there's just not another, coaching organization that operates the way we operate. I looked for them to model it, and they don't exist.
Right.
So if I looked at industry average, it would have been cottage industry, small, medium, 1 to 3 people. This is where they get to. None of them. The average is way less than $1 million per person. So it's like, get that stuff out of your mind, because once you read it, once you hear it, it's in there. If you just don't put it in there in the first place, you don't know any different.
Right. And as a leader, right now, if that's what I'm thinking about, that's what I'm sharing with our team, Okay. And I've walked in 20 years ago and said, stop the remodel. We're going out of business, right? The news says, we shouldn't be spending money right now. And it's like, are you an idiot? Right? I don't care what the pending recession is. It's not affecting us. A recession's optional. And I'll be honest with you, Andy, I will be pissed if the recession doesn't come soon. I love a recession. To me, it's a business enema, right? It does a good cleansing of the shit businesses that are giving us all a bad name. And trust me, none of my businesses do better in a recession. I'm not one of those businesses. But my competition does so much worse that we are able to lap them. And it's a correction of so many things that are just out of control today. So I welcome a recession. I think anytime there's difficulties, the strong really can lap.
Yeah, you want to ultimately get to the place of being anti-fragile, right? So You're not, those things can come and go. And we're still in whatever COVID stage we're in. But for March of 2020 till whatever time frame you want to put on it, 2 years, that was really disruptive.
Yes.
Like your business was disrupted. Mine went from, we had 140 something flights we had to go get refunds for. Our business in Petra is to travel to a city on an airplane, stay in a hotel, put a bunch of people in a room and work with them for a day or 2 days.
Right. That's your inventory. That's what you sell.
And we do that 200 times every 90 days somewhere on the globe. And that stuff completely shut down on March the 13th, 2020. So we had to move everything to do something differently. And it was the pace at which we did that not only kept us in business, but allowed us to scale, actually consider 40% scale during that time period. So in the year of COVID, we grew 40%. And not a lot of folks can look at that and say that. And we sit around today as a society, mostly because of what we get put into our brains. And we are fearful of the current situation. Oh, the recession's looming and it's going to be. Think about what you did 2 years ago. Think about how hard that was and the lessons we learned. I don't know that we should be worried about this. The term "this too shall pass" comes to mind. It's going to not be there. What are we doing to build for the future? Just keep building for the future, because the future is going to come. That is a guarantee.
Yes, I agree. But listen, I think all your stuff, Petra coaching, your No Try, Only Do book, Boundless, Vitamin B, your second book, all those, I think they help recession-proof you personally and professionally. So, all right, Andy, closing comments for our listeners.
I would say I had a group of entrepreneurs yesterday in Washington, D.C. for half a day. And I always ask them, this is a business owner meeting. So I say, who's got a plan for their business and KPIs and dashboards, and everybody in business has some level of that, but they don't focus on their own selves like they do on their businesses. Most people don't focus on their own selves like they do on jobs. And that's a choice. They're just making in my opinion, a poor choice. I've made those poor choices. You've made those poor choices. And they always come back to hurt us in the end. So, my parting thought here is do your very best the rest of this year and going into next year to really spend somewhat more time on yourself. And if you feel selfish for it, that's only because you haven't been doing it enough. You should feel a little bit selfish. We have a tendency to just give it away to everybody else. They ask, we give it. I started this thing by thanking you for always showing up. Probably should say no sometimes, right? And take something for yourself and be better because of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's the old adage of, why do you put your mask on first before helping others? We aren't worth anything if we aren't taking care of ourselves first. Cool. Love it, Andy. Andy's information will be in here. We are including Andy's email, which is andy@boundless.me, where you can get all his books, petracoach.com, boundless.me. You have to get this stuff. This stuff will change your life as it is me. Andy, I can't thank you enough for taking the time from your busy schedule to be on this. But just the last, 10 to 12 years, the friendship, mentorship, just being a really positive influence and inspiration in my life. I can't thank you enough.
I was going to show you something. This is how you impacted me. I was, I think, the learning chair president or something of EO Nashville at some point, and we brought you into a meeting. And I came up, introduced you, I think, in the day. And you were up there getting ready, like we all do as speakers, slide decks and all that kind of stuff. And you had a clicker. And I looked at this thing's badass, right? So I looked at it and I said, that is the coolest thing ever. And you were showing me it had like a laser on it and you can control this and do all this. I'm holding it in my hand. You can't see this on the podcast, but I'm holding it in my hand. So at the end of the presentation, you came and found me and you handed me the clicker that you were using. And said, hey, just take this. Just it's yours. I'm like, dude, that's crazy. Why would you do that? I know they're like $200. Why would you do that? Hey, I don't worry about it. I got another. I don't know if you actually had another one in your bag or backup or whatever, but you gave me this. I think that I've had to replace it and buy another one, but I stay with this. And I remember every time I pick this up and I use it, which is a lot, I think of you and I think of that moment. And I am better because of it, because I do that now for other people. So you passed that trait on to me as an example, and I appreciate it, John.
Thank you. I thanks for reminding me of that. I forgot about that, and I've been looking for that thing for 10 years. Thanks, Andy. I appreciate it. And thank you, Revolutionaries, for another episode of the Customer Service Revolution podcast. We will see you next week.
We appreciate your reviews. Please be sure to share your comments and let us know what you're enjoying most on the podcast. And to hear more episodes, be sure to subscribe now on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. Thanks for listening and being part of the customer service revolution.